All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to edition 71 of the core developer meetings. Um, we'll jump right in to issue or agenda item number one, the Istanbul related client updates. I'm opening up Martin's tracker here, and it looks like we have some new stuff. We can just go through the clients and see what's new on each one. Um, we'll start with Geth and Martin.
Yeah, sorry, you were asking?
Oh yeah, what's new as far as the any client updates or client
Right,
releases?
so yesterday we released a new version of Geth where we have set the fork numbers for the testnets. Unfortunately, we discovered an issue and did a hotfix release today. Um, yeah, that's about it for Geth. And the issue particularly concerns miners. So any miners who are running 194 should not be doing that, but instead run 195 or something earlier. That's about it.
Okay. Nethermind.
Hi. So not that many changes since the last time. Everything is merged. We updated the block numbers. We've been running the tests that we've been running so far all green, and I think we'll be testing the remaining batches. There are some releases that are already marked as Istanbul, but after we run all the tests, we'll probably do some announcements for people about the final version for Istanbul.
Okay, thank you. And we have Trinity Piper.
I believe we have all of the Istanbul features completed. We've got a release probably coming that'll support it. We've got an upstream thing that we're working on getting in, but we have Istanbul support, I think, completely done.
Okay, excellent. Um, Paul, what if you have an update for Aleth? Just basically if there's any news on client implementation stuff for the EIPs or releases.
Uh, so not everything is finished yet. I think we're working on Blake 2 now, and there was some there was some unclear changes about I think chain ID that kind of caused a slightly mess. Uh, yeah, so not release is scheduled yet.
Okay. Um, and then man, it's gonna take me forever to figure out how to pronounce this consistently. Besu?
Good enough for me. Basu
Great.
has the fork blocks and the code base. We're going to do a release Monday. This will be a 1.2.4 release. Will be the first one under the Basu name. 1.2.3 has all the code in. It's just not plugged into the built-in JSON files we have for the Genesis. So you can run either in a test, but we'll have a formal release that just magically puts it in on Monday, Australia time, I think.
Okay. Is anyone here from Parity?
Yeah. Hi, everyone, David.
Hi, David.
We have merged all the Istanbul EIP changes, um, and we merged master today in the block number update. Have not made a release of that yet. Probably Monday or Tuesday. We are struggling a bit with the JSON tests, and my aspiration is to get that into the release before, so that's why it might slip till Tuesday.
Okay. Sounds good. And I think that's all the clients. So just a reminder, the one of the action items from last time was that the cat herders were going to create a document that outlined um, basically what Istanbul was, what the EIPs meant to people, kind of a little warning about 1884, and a link to all of the clients that could be downloaded that have the block number in them. So we'll wait to release that until we get most or all of the clients' releases that have that block number, and then we'll push that blog post all over so we can have proper support going on, and more miners and stuff switching over and things like that. Okay, so next on the agenda, we picked a block number for Istanbul, Ropsten. It's going to be 6485846 on October 2nd. We also had a call with Gorley, and theirs was that was decided on that call to be 1561651 for October 30th. If you go to the agenda, it's the first comment. Offrey left a list. Rink B block is going to be 5435345 in November. That was a mouthful. And Kovan is in December with 1411141. So we successfully got all palindromes. We really know what's important in this space. So the Blake 2B EIP update, I've been pinging some people about that because we were wanting to merge it. And I know Axic was talking to some people too, I think, because there was some confusion about what the latest stuff was. And I think the latest thing was that gist that Peter had. But Axit, can you provide any updates on that since it looked like you were the last one who was asking in the core dev chat? And if you don't have that much updates, you can ask now for how people implemented it and stuff. Oh, and you're still muted. There you go.
Sorry, you meant the 2200?
Is that the Blake 2B? I'm pretty sure it is.
Nope.
No,
Oh, nope. Did you, was 2200 the one that you had on the core dev chat that was messed up?
Yeah, the net gas metering for S-Store. That's the
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
That's the most complex one, which isn't still merged yet.
Is Blake 2BF merged? I haven't looked.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that quells my concerns then, because that's what I messaged someone. I think I messaged Way about it, and they must have fixed that stuff. Okay, go ahead with net metered S store then.
Yeah, I didn't really prepare with any questions. I listed them, I think yesterday or the day before on the channel, and there were like 4 or 5 comments on the PR, which were left unaddressed by that time. But since then, I think some of them did receive some comments. But it's still not final yet. Maybe Martin, who was most engaged on the PR, maybe Martin can give some comments on that.
The net gas metering one is mainly Way's brainchild. But I think as far as I understand it, the issue with it is that the clause about 2300 in the EIP is in the bottom, whereas in the implementations, it's actually the first thing that an implementation should do. Does that sound correct to you, Axic?
Yeah, I think that was the first issue identified, but I personally haven't gone through all the steps listed there, and I haven't compared it to Geth because the first step was different.
Right. So the first step was what basically differentiates 2200 from 1283, and yeah, it should obviously be the first thing that the client does, and I think every implementation does that. But definitely it should be addressed in the EIP. I don't know if does anyone else have any comments about this? oddity.
Is Go Ethereum used to generate the new test cases, or which client is used for that?
So I think, as far as I know, yes, the official consensus tests, of which there aren't that many, they are. I think Dimitri is using Geth to generate them. Apart from that, I have generated. So I released. I've done a continuous fuzzing Geth versus parity with quite a lot of invocations of S-load and S-stores from various places and calls and calls, calling calls and calls, and recursive stuff. With Geth as the base. And Geth is highly consistent with parity in over 7 million test cases. Aside from that, I also exported 10,000 test cases, which I know at least some of the clients have tested because it found a hit on BSU where they hit exactly that condition that added clause for 2200, but they had implemented as less than instead of less than or equal, or if it's the other way around. So obviously, yeah, so I'm quite certain that there is test coverage for it. And yeah, so yeah.
Would it be a good next step to maybe make sure that the EIP reflects what Go Ethereum is doing, merging it in that form, and then asking every other client to review that and see whether they implemented it differently?
Yes, and I think I saw that Wei left some comments yesterday that he was on a business trip, but would address the concerns. I haven't actually looked if he has had time to do that. But yeah, if anyone is listening who is client developer, if you know that, yeah, I mean, speak up if you think it sounds odd. But I'm assuming that all of you already put that condition as the first thing you do. Because I think you would fail quite early. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have it last of all, basically.
Okay, any other comments from client devs about that?
No, I think that S-load and store will be one set of tests that we are waiting for to be extracted from this retest F sourced from Geth to confirm everything. So this will be the test cases that I was mentioning.
Okay, excellent. I'm browsing through the comments.
Hudson,
Oh, go ahead.
so the other set of questions on the PR for this were mostly about the mostly about two things. One, I think a while ago it was agreed that 2200 should be self-contained. It should have all the details needed. It shouldn't just say that refer to 1283 for X and refer to 1706 for Y. Rather than that, it should be self-contained. But it still has, I mean, these are like just minor, I guess, EIP details, that it still refers to them as required ones. And I think some sections may not be self-contained. I'm not sure if you still want that or not, but I just wanted to raise it. And the second question people had there is, compared to 1283, the biggest change was to also reflect the S-load gas change. But that gas change isn't reflected in the appendix and some other parts, some measurements or tables in the EIP. It still uses the old S-load cost. So I think these were the two major things people were confused about.
So, one thing that could maybe help, David, if you talk to Wei, could you ask them about whether or not that should be self-contained, since I think they're the main champion on that EIP. Am I right that they're the main champion, Alex?
Yeah.
Yes, it's correct. I will definitely do so. I have not been able to speak to him directly. I pinged him yesterday. He said he would reply to the audits chat, which he did, saying that he was on traveling, and that
Okay,
I expect him to address most concerns as soon as he can.
great, perfect. Yeah, there's not a huge rush on that from the as you know if he's on a business trip, but yeah, as long as it's addressed. Okay. Um, and was there anything else that needed to be addressed from that list, Alex?
Yeah, I think none of the EIPs apart from Chain ID are in the final state. And Martin also asked, what is the process of moving to the final state? And um, I think the EC precompile EIP just received a pull request to move it to final. And maybe this would be a good time to briefly cover what would be the process for being final. And I think the short answer to that is EIP1 defines it, but I don't think it defines the process in a really good way for core EIPs. Um, but it says that they should move through this last call process first, and then they can be adopted. Maybe we don't really have time for all these different processes to take place now. So maybe we could just agree on this call for some of them to be moved to final. And I would propose that the EC precompile and the call data repricing should definitely be moved to final because they seem unlikely to have any changes, or I never seen anybody ask questions or complain about them. And Martin also proposed to move 1884 to final. So maybe we could just take a vote on this call.
Okay. Does anyone have? I mean, I'm not anticipating any opposition to making those final, but and also I think Matt asked that 1108 get moved to final as well. And that one would be is that the alt? That's the alt BN 128 reduction. I don't think there was anything left on that. I think it can go to final. Hmm.
So are we saying
Let me
we're moving everyone that's not already final, that's accepted to final,
I'm
except
not
2200, right?
I'm not sure why we don't have time to put everything in a last call phase for a couple of days and then transition them to final if nobody speaks up. Like, we can go through the process.
Yeah, instead of doing it for 2 weeks like it says, we can just wait till like Tuesday or something.
Yeah, I meant if you stick to the book, aka EIP1, then you don't have enough time because that stipulates at least 2 weeks. But if you choose to do for less days, then I guess we can do it.
Yeah, so
Yeah, let's just do it for less
so maybe
days.
that's a less controversial way to do this. Not that this is controversial, but just that rather than having everybody vote, let's make them final. Potentially the vote here is let's make them final after putting them in last call for, yeah, call it till Tuesday or Wednesday or something.
Yeah, because Tuesday's when Parity wants to do a release, so maybe sometime between Monday and Tuesday we'll kind of know by then if anyone has anything brought up, I'm guessing.
So should we make PRs? Should I make a PR for 1884?
To switch it to final, yeah, I believe so. Is that? Yeah, because then the bot's gonna see it's final, and then an editor merges it, is my understanding. I haven't read EIP1 in forever, though. Okay, let's see. I think that went over pretty much every EIP. Bryant did have a note in here. I'll paste the link in chat. And it's talking about for EIP 1344, there is a um, update on how the opcode returns a 256-bit value, um, and that Parity and Trinity might be affected by this. The fact that it was updated, or that there was a suggestion that was removed during the process of coming up with what EIP 1344 was. So I don't fully understand it, but I think Parity and Trinity should just watch out for this update, is kind of what I'm reading. And Bryant couldn't be on this call, but yeah, any other clients, just look over that and make sure you're following the EIP correctly.
Yeah,
Anyone have comments on that?
just for some context. So the only case this would ever blow up would be if someone has a private chain where they set the chain ID to some silly large number. So it's not really something we need to be super cautious about. I mean, yeah, it'd be good if we agree, but it's not like a mainnet consensus issue.
Okay, great. And then Matt, I saw you had a couple of updates in here, about 1108 and Blake 2B, which was 152. Did we cover? I think we covered kind of what you said in the comments, but was there anything else we missed?
No, I mean, I just wanted a quick summary. Basically, we looked at actually taking everything out of the RFC and embedding it directly in the EIP. And the issue that I had is that I actually overspecs EIP. A few of us are using implementations that do not follow the same, for example, Sigma or V, but that do match the tests provided in the EIP. So that was my main pushback when we actually went to update the EIP. The other thing that we did is I just did my best to make sure that it was clear that it was Blake 2, which included Blake 2B rather than just Blake 2B, and also that it's Blake 2 64-bit variants in the EIP. So I know that it's probably not perfect, but I hope that addresses the nomenclature concerns.
All right, any comments on that? Okay, great. Um, I'm trying to see if there's anything else on here. We'll do testing updates in a little bit. I'll make sure we get those in. Oh, actually, it's not on the agenda at all. Do we want to just go over testing updates now? That's something that's going to be interesting. I know there was some fuzzing stuff and Hive updates.
Just
So Martin, if
before,
you want to go,
just as
yeah,
we're
sure, Tim.
talking about the EIPs, it wasn't 100% clear what we're doing about last call, so we're moving them all to last call until next Tuesday, and then final. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great.
Okay. And then, yeah, Martin or anyone else who wants to go first with the testing updates.
Yeah, it appears that Dimitri is not on the call. But there is some new consensus tests, cross-client consensus tests have been made, but there has been also a change in the test format. So yeah, both Geth and Parity and Hive is having some problems with them. I think they might have been regenerated during the afternoon. I haven't checked yet, but they're in the works. In the meanwhile, we've also done fuzzing, and I already mentioned that. I wrote a bit about it on the PM. There is also updates happening regarding the libfuzzer. If you recall, we have one set of fuzz testing that does not use introspection and doesn't actually see how much it covers. And that's the JSON based. And the other one is the libfuzzer, which actually does coverage measurements during executions and then modifies the input state and the data to get more coverage. And that's the libfuzzer. And it's running Geth versus Parity. And we're hoping to have it up during the weekend or on early next week. Yeah, we have a new server for Hive We just got it up in the last couple of days. And Frank Senselars is working on that one. And yeah, there are some more updates coming. So we got Aleph on there as well, and also Nethermind. Yeah, right. I'm hoping to add Nethermind testing, plus testing as well, because they were nice enough to implement the standard JSON trace output from state test. So I can't really speak about the coverage from the official tests, what percentage is done, but from a fuzzing perspective, I'm kind of satisfied so far. Yeah, so it's looking good so far. That's about it for me.
Anybody else have testing updates or questions? Okay. The next thing I wanted to bring up, and with regards to testing, Trent's here today from Whiteblock because Whiteblock has been helping ETH2 with things like I think there's a Genesis framework coming out and some of the testing around the networking stack, if I'm remembering correctly, and then they also did Ethereum Classic's Nazgul contained testnet like testing suite, and they had something they wanted to help with for the, ETH1X testing before Istanbul. So Trent, you can go ahead and just briefly describe kind of what the idea was, so people are aware of it as Whiteblock moves forward with that.
Yeah, sure. I'll just keep it short because we're still working out most of the details, but I dropped a link to what we did with the Ethereum Classic testnet. It was just a temporary publicly joinable testnet that we host, and basically proving that the hard fork clients are going to work as planned. It's what we imagine is like a step before doing a public testnet, like switching over Robson or Gurley. We can do something here, prove our assumptions or test our assumptions, and what we can also do with the Whiteblock Genesis platform is what we're doing with ETH2, doing multi-client hosted testnets, and then we can also run specific contracts and make sure they're going to work. Specifically in the case of like 1884, we can test when they're going to break, how they're going to break, and just once we get a certain amount of data, we can dump that out, do analysis on it, and then we can iterate on that, run different test nets iteratively, one after the other, and it's sort of meant to be a quick and dirty process. At least that's what we're planning. We'll have more details coming out soon about the specifics, how many nodes, how long it's going to run, when it'll be publicly available. But that's a general idea. We think it'll be an interesting experiment to add on to and hopefully supplement the other public test nets.
Question. So those testnets, are those bootstrapped from an existing testnet? So you can replay the existing transactions, or are they just clean testnets?
Interesting. I think they're going to be clean, but the way that we have done it in the past is there's a Genesis file that instructs how to what sort of information to supply. So that might be something we could do in the future, like kickstart it with specific state and specific parameters like that.
So, I have a question. So I don't understand. So if you launch a brand new testnet, what is the point of? I mean, what is the Whiteblock platform? Why don't we just? What's the difference between that and just launching a public testnet?
I think for one, we're trying to prove that what we're doing works. So we're just testing our product and making sure that you can do it. And what it's meant to be is a lightweight, iterative system where you're you can start it up and tear it down quickly without necessarily a ton of coordination from other people.
Okay, so while this is being set up, just a quick info that yesterday I set up the Istanbul testnet based on Click protocol. So I send the chain spec on the all core devs, and you can all connect. I think it's already created like 5,000 empty blocks. So if you just connect, then I can vote you in and we can run it. Still, the Whiteblock probably will be good if you can set up all the clients in the future easily, and because now we have to coordinate to get others to jump on board.
Yeah. One of the other things that we've built into the product is that you can, for example, preload a bunch of wallets or set up accounts beforehand in a YAML file, for example. So what we're trying to do is just automate this process of kickstarting and abstracting a little bit of this away.
Yeah, to my ears, it sounds a bit like this thing called Puppet, which.
Yep. Yeah. It's very similar to Puppet, but sort of on steroids, where we're hosting all the backend for you. So all you'd have to do right now, it's just CLI. So, but in the future, it would be just like a web UI, and you just click, hey, I want a testnet of 30 nodes, and I want to run this specific test case, and then we'll spin it up for you, and then you can introduce. Part of what we also do is introducing like adversarial conditions, like you can pump up the latency, see if things are still going to come to consensus. You can decrease bandwidth, have network partitions, see if the network comes back to consensus, things like that.
Awesome, then I understand it a lot better. Thomas, I saw about the testnet you started, and it's really great that you did. And I was hoping to get the guest node on there today, but yeah, there was this critical issue and gap and stuff. I hope to get it done either during the weekend or early next week.
Yeah, great. Just let me know, so I'll vote the new miners in. One question for Trent, because last time we were discussing Genesis, I think you had support only for Clarity and Geth. So for this setup for Istanbul, do you think that you'll add support for the remaining clients?
Right now we have support for, well, what's relevant to this group. We also have support for Pantheon. Well, what's it called now? Besu. So we would have enough support for a multi-client testnet. We would have to update to the Istanbul spec, but I don't think that'd be too difficult. It's just wrapping the clients in a Docker image, making sure they're speaking properly.
About Alice, Nethermind, and the Python Trinity.
I'm sorry, was that a question? I didn't catch it.
So will you have also the wrappers for the Trinity, Alice, and Nethermind?
We currently don't have those, but I can definitely look into, like, ideally we would support all of the ETH1X clients. Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else have comments or questions? Okay, thanks, Trent.
Thank you, Hudson.
And just reach out to Trent if you all have any questions on that. Usually it'd be Zach, but he's getting busy with his wedding and stuff, so yeah, just reach out to Trent. Let's see, next up. I just wanted to there's a link on item number 4 for the Ethereum Roadmap 2020, a community discussion at DevCon 5. Day 1, so we're not, this year at DevCon, there's not going to be day 0, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. So for day 1, there's not going to be a main stage that has speakers on it. It's going to be divided by partitions where there's going to be different workshops, seminars, and groups held. This Ethereum Roadmap 2020 community discussion is going to be on the 8th from 1 to 5 in the convention room that has a 200-person capacity. It's going to talk about the technical roadmaps for ETH1, ETH2, and the transition from ETH1 to ETH2. It has the format on here, the schedule, and and it ends with working groups. It starts with an overview and then the ETH1 roadmap. I'm doing a talk on ETH1X, so I'll probably be the main point on the Ethereum 1 roadmap unless I get pulled into something and I have to find someone else. One more thing to note, there is a link to the full schedule of community sessions for September 8th under schedule. It just says see the full schedule. So that's pretty interesting to see all the stuff the magicians have put together this year. Um, and yeah, just let's see. Oh man, this is editable. Oof. I need to get lock this. I need to get someone to lock this down. Anyways, um, yeah. So feel free to join that, and it'll be. Oh yeah, it needs to be October 8th. Good call, whoever just edited that. Um, yeah, so feel free to join, and I'll probably, if there's another core dev meeting before DevCon, which we'll discuss in a little bit, I'll remind you all of this or throw it on the core devs channel. And if you want to help this, especially if you have some knowledge that might be really good for this, please participate, join in. There's a few people, especially if you all know Jamie Pitts. He's one of the organizers, so is Annette. I can not pronounce her last name. Rokolvaga? I'm. Can anyone pronounce that last name? Either way, it's Annette. Um, and they are part of the people organizing this. I think also Maria Paula. I know that she's at least the MC. So that's that for that one. Both ProgPoW audits have been released. They've been released for a bit because it happened right after the last core dev meeting, so it feels like forever ago. But if y'all want to look at that, you can just click the link, and there is a blog post from the cat herders that has links to both the least authority software audit and the Bob Rao hardware audit. Um, and let's see. Oh, Matt just posted a cool comment about having a bunch of Kubernetes infrastructure for quick testnets that they might open source, and if someone's interested in that, to reach out to them. Was there anything else on that, Matt, or just simple
Oh
comment?
no, I just caught up with Trent in the chat, but yeah, I guess for anyone who is interested, I know that it might also help for testing. So
Great. Anyone have questions on or comments on the roadmap thing, the fact that both ProgPoW audits have been released, anything like that? Okay. Um, review the previous decisions made and action items for call 70. This one's pretty light. Uh, leave Blake 2 as Blake 2B, keeping it fixed to 12 rounds was decision 70.1. I think that might have been tweaked a little bit because one of the action items was that Alex was going to talk to the EIP 152 champions to discuss the concerns, so I think some of that might have changed.
No, it was
Did
left
we keep it?
as it
Oh,
was. Yeah.
I'm thinking of a different number because I remember us staying over after that, and I
Yep.
remember picking the
They
number
did.
32, but I forgot what for.
No. No. Yeah. There was a long discussion, but in the end, nothing was changed.
yeah, so that actual
Great.
decision point, like that text is wrong, but where we landed was leave the S's.
Okay. Great. Can someone who's writing notes take note to edit that decision within the Core Dev Meeting 70 summary notes? You can just do a PR on that. Any of the cat herders in here who want to just change that decision so we have it on record that that's not what happened.
Will do.
Thanks. Decision 70.2, the fork of Ropsten testnet is set for the 2nd of October, and the block corresponds to that date will be selected. That's happened. And then I already talked about Action 70.1 with Alex and EIP 152 champions. Action 70.2 are the cat herders creating a communication that highlights the concerns around 1884 and provides it back to the core devs for review. So once we have it at a point where we can take comments on it, we're going to put it in the all core dev channel for a little bit and make sure everything's good on there. Let's see. I don't think there's any comments about that. That's pretty straightforward. there's a comment from Holger, who couldn't be on the call, from Ethereum JS. They have a release version 4.1.0 of the VM that's full with full featured Istanbul support. Although it's still labeled as beta, it does have full Istanbul support. And then, oh, is that all the agenda items? Did anyone else have any other agenda items or things that we missed, or things that needs to be said?
Hey guys.
Hey, Bob.
So just on ProgPoW, just one thing to note off discussions we had on the all core devs is that in terms of the EIPs tagged for Berlin, that there's been this sort of just sweep of things forward, such that ProgPoW is currently sitting in tentatively accepted. I don't know, what the process was on that, but
The
anyone would
process
like
was
to
that
talk
we
about that,
decided
that would be good.
twice to accept it.
I'm sorry?
The process was that we decided twice to accept it, and then it became tentative, hinging upon the security audit.
I see.
Yeah, and the security audits haven't been fully investigated by anyone in the core devs that have come to me, but I also haven't heard anyone bring up anything groundbreaking about the audits that would be like a showstopper either.
And the context of it being tentative was that it was the list of tentatives was more accepted for Berlin, but we're not going to, because the tentatively accepted was for this first fork.
I see.
At least that's where the word tentative came from.
So regarding investigating the audits, I did read a little bit of both of them. From the hardware audit, I don't think there's anything that's unique to ProgPoW. ETACH has the same vulnerabilities. There was one question in the least authority audit, suggestion one, concerning about putting padding at the end of the Kachak hash. I reached out to ifdefelse on Twitter, and they replied, and I put it in the Gitter, that they are confident that they don't need it, and they explained that the padding is used mostly to differentiate the various versions of the hash, because Kitchak has one version of the padding where they use a different bit signature, and the SHA3 has a different form of the padding to make sure that they are unique. And it's mostly there to provide the uniqueness. And they stated that in the context of what they're doing with the repeated use of it, and the stuff that they're doing at the beginning and the end of the process, that it doesn't really have any security impact, and that's what they came forward with. And that satisfies my concern. That's what I was thinking, because it's such a deep in the weeds thing. It's not going to be subject to an extension attack when you're immediately going after another round with all the details on it and finishing it up with a nice, pretty hash at the end.
Okay, so another quick update on that. I am collecting community sentiment again on that. This is not a cat herders thing. This is just me collecting arguments again and laying them out, because there's a lot of there's a lot of loud people, or a group of loud people, not sure yet, because it's kind of hard to tell when people are really loud, that seem to don't want ProgPoW anymore, or have concerns or things like that, due to some political stuff, as well as a few arguments that are technical. So I'm just going to try to lay out all those arguments as soon as I can. It might have to be after I get back from vacation. But I've been collecting them, and I already have over 55 Twitter and Reddit links. So I'm going to sift through those and just put them on like a Reddit or a blog post or something eventually. So that'll be a resource for people to kind of look at the latest community arguments and sentiment, and things like that. There would be a process if people wanted to push for a decision that's already been accepted to be changed within the core devs. And I know ETC recently had some drama around ProgPoW and stuff like that, so that kind of also spearheaded part of the sentiment collection.
So with that list, I think it'll be useful to identify ones that are new, arguments that are new since, I don't know, February, March, versus arguments that are repeats of the same arguments. I think that would be a valuable signal.
I agree.
And James Presswich had put together a good Trello board, right?
No, that was Scott.
It was actually, yeah, Scott.
Oh, right.
Scott Lewis, or yeah, Lewis.
Oh, yes, you're right.
But James has commented a little bit before on ProgPoW, though. What was that, Trent?
Oh, I was just going to ask Dano. So you've spoken with the authors about the Ketchak modification. Could they possibly write something up about that, like a public address of the audit concerns? That'd be a little more helpful than just like a small chat in the corner of the internet.
That was the extent of the interaction, was the Twitter things. They're kind of hard to get a hold of. So I copied it into the ProgPoW review room, but the chat log just kept rolling and scrolling with all the concerns about it that were being brought up again. So it is in the log if we can find it. I can post it again.
Okay.
If you can just send me that link, Dano, I'm going to include that because there's going to be people who bring up the argument that I will list about the Kekax hash. And at that point, I can put the rebuttal statement that this is what they said.
Will do.
All right, does anyone else have any other comments? Okay, are there any other issues besides the one we just talked about that need to be addressed?
This has been brought up a couple times, but would the core devs on this call consider integrating ProgPoW but not actually implementing it? Or sorry, releasing it in a like a client to mainnet.
I think until we reapproach the entire issue, that probably can't be answered, is my opinion, because it's already an accepted state. So from a process perspective, I guess no. But I mean, obviously, anyone can consider anything they want.
I'm not sure I understood the question, but I mean, ProgPoW has already been merged into Parity, and it's activatable, and I guess we could do the same for Geth, but the thing is we're not sure if we're going to go with the same version that Parity has, which is 0.92, I think it is, or if we should aim for 0.93, which changes the parameter that how often you need to recompile the GPU kernel. But I'm not sure I understood what the question was.
I mean, it's broader than the technical implementation. It starts to touch on, or at least what I've seen brought up is that it's a more nuanced conversation about like the transition from ETH1 to ETH2 and how having ProgPoW could be sort of a dissuasion to interrupt the deposit contract, or it's sort of like keeping it in our back pocket to be used later on if necessary. For example, if ASICs start to interrupt the network. That's what I've heard. But it seems like the intent is it's already integrated into clients, and once it's ready, it's going to go live to mainnet. Whereas the alternative opinion I've seen is keep it integrated but not activated until such a time as it's like very much needed.
Right, that's one argument that some people make.
Mm-hmm. And you were just saying, Trent, what if there was a feeling from the core devs of how likely that would be? Was that the question?
Right. Yeah. I'm just wondering because it seems like the sentiment is like it's ready to go as soon as we've crossed these hurdles. It's going to be activated, and I haven't heard the alternative necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's too early for the alternative since, I mean, it feels like everything's like been a forever ago, but really everyone screaming about it was like only after Bob's audit, which has been released in the last 2 weeks. So, yeah. Or if there was screaming about it before, it kind of died down for a while, so we didn't really get any major, I guess, I didn't collect that much sentiment from the community enough to bring it up as an item yet, up until now, and now I'm collecting sentiment. So
Sure.
that's my personal thing.
Yeah. So just one more thought. What the disconnect I'm seeing is that the core devs are approaching it technically, and a lot of the outside concerns some of them are technical, but a lot of them are political, and it would help to have both sides understand each other better if the core devs, specifically the people on this call who are, like it or not, the sort of the tacit gatekeepers of what makes it in or out, if they responded to those political ideas. And I know some people have written about why they think it's a good or a bad idea, but we continue to address these concerns where they are. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
You
So
also need to
regarding
realize
that,
that. Go ahead, Martin. Go ahead, Martin.
Go ahead,
yeah, I was
Martin.
going to say regarding that argument of keeping it in the back pocket. If you have time, I can give a brief answer to that from my perspective.
Sure.
So the way I see it, if say we become dominated by ASICs and then something happens, and that could be, for example, the rollout double chains, so that they do some double spans and something happens, and it doesn't matter really what, but suddenly, okay, we decide we need to activate ProgPoW. And the problem if that happens is, I think that switch cannot be done in a day or an hour. It can be done maybe over 2 weeks. And once it's been decided to do that, then all the existing miner infrastructure know that, hey, we're going to be kicked out, and they're going to do whatever they want with the chain, because their investment is going to be worthless. So they can just continue to do this roll out new chains, and while that happens during that week, the actual value of Ether is going to plummet during those attacks. And when we eventually, if we ever manage to actually do the switch to ProgPoW, we might discover that there is no mining farm that is able and ready to pick up and switch over to actually mine Ether on at full scale, because they're doing other things. They've moved on in the meantime. Which leaves us still, I mean, the only ones who will actually do mining on Ether, particularly if the value plummets, will be basically pump and dump gangs that try to inflate it and dump it, and shenanigans will happen. So I don't think keeping it in the back pocket is something that is going to play out well. So I think that's why I think it would be better to just do it. Yeah. I didn't really want to agitate or have this discussion on this call. So I wasn't really prepared. But that's my thoughts about it.
Okay, Dano and then Tim.
I was just going to point out that some of the political discussion has been attacks on some of the all-core devs as well. So the all-core devs are aware of some of the politics going on with it. It's not like we're sticking our heads in the sand. We're just not engaging in the political process because we don't see the constructive nature of what's been going on.
Okay. And then Tim, did you have something?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so is that a sufficient enough answer, Trent, as far as kind of where we are in the current process?
Well, I had one thought for Trent as well, that I think it
Sure.
does a little bit of a disservice to the cat herders who, 9 months ago did much of this process already, and it isn't. And at that time, there was thinking about political and all of those things as well, like explicitly on the all-core dev calls even was discussed.
Right. Yeah. I'm just
ago.
trying to give a little context as to why people are bringing it up again and raising their voices. Just trying to.
Yeah, there's new political drama, in my opinion.
I'm just trying to bridge the different parties to understanding a little bit better.
Okay, thanks, Trent. James, was there anything else?
Nope.
Cool. Okay, so I'll do that sentiment collection. We'll keep our ears open, and due to the new, mostly political arguments, a few technical arguments, that kind of thing, and yeah, try to be civil about this, everyone listening in, because if you're loud and angry, I'm going to be less likely to take you seriously. So that's me personally,
One
at
last thing
least.
from the side chat. Bob and Matt have both said they're both pointing out that, and I've heard this as well, that they think that ProgPoW being introduced would be likely to cause a chain split. Um, how serious some people are, I have no idea, but I've heard it enough times that it's worth mentioning on this call. That's all.
And that's, I think, an argument that the numbers don't support. When we did a minor poll with 70% participation, they were 100% in support of it. Not a single miner took the time to do a negative vote. If there was a single miner that took the time to put a negative vote in, I would put more weight in that argument, to be honest.
Just to add,
Yeah, and
to that, also, I checked for fun yesterday in a very non-scientific way, but there's still a decent amount of miners signaling ProgPoW yes in their blocks. So I'm not sure like what percentage it is and whatnot, but just like randomly scrolling through the blocks, it seems like the miners who are voting yes, like just did not remove those votes. So it might even still be able to capture that sentiment.
I'd say though that the controversy is not necessarily on the mining side, but on the user side. I think that if there was a chain split, it would be an ETC style one of user rebellion, and then mining building up to support that. That's how I think that would play out if it did.
Earlier this year, we nearly had a chain split user rebellion in favor of ProgPoW, just as a point of information on the other side.
yeah, that actually did happen almost, and that one was actually like had code behind it. So if I see anything from, I will mention it if in my sentiment collection, if I see any true attempts or plans or preparations for like a chain split. But I mean, forking's one of the great things about blockchains, in my opinion. If you don't agree with something, you can leave.
Sure. If the split happens,
Anybody else?
if the split
Go
happens
ahead,
for a
Bob.
good reason, I would agree. Yes.
Totally. Okay. Anybody else have comments? Okay. Yeah, one final thing. We do try to keep politics out of the core devs calls. It is inevitable sometimes, and I think most of us have addressed that fact that it can be inevitable since we're kind of, like Trent mentioned, somewhat like gatekeepers in a way because we're the ones who put the code in for everybody who's running the code. So yeah, that's unfortunate. And then Martin, you were mentioning one thing earlier about how Geth's on 9.3, right? I think actually Geth's on 9.2 according to Andrea Lanfranchi.
Yeah, might be.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
It's
but
just
it's
a
not
few
merged.
parameter changes. It's easy.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, if there's nothing else, oh, we need to figure out if we're meeting again, like when, because it's kind of close to DevCon in 2 weeks. People might be arriving in Japan at that time and not having very solid internet. I've heard, who's been to Japan? Is the Wi-Fi really not that prominent in Japan, like at in places, or is that like a lie, or like something I'm reading that's old, like news? Okay, I'll ask other people who've been to Japan. Do we want to meet in 2 weeks? I'll be on a plane, so I won't be able to do it, so I'll just find a backup if we do want to meet in 2 weeks.
I can be that backup if that's the issue. If people do want to meet.
We can do that, or we can decide if there's anything to really meet about between now and maybe the end of next week or something, or the middle of next week.
Maybe we can put up a blank agenda and see if people just put stuff in the comments.
Usually people don't even remember to put up stuff in the comments till the day of, though, so I don't think that'd be a good indication that there isn't things to talk about. Hmm. So yeah, does anyone have an opinion on if it should happen in 2 weeks?
I'd
I
be
would say
happy to.
probably yes.
Yeah, probably yes.
Okay. Tim will run the meeting in 2 weeks. If there's really not much on the agenda, we can just cancel it, change our minds if people bring that up on the core dev chat. All right. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. Meeting in 2 weeks, same time. Tim will be running that, and thank you all for your time. Cheers.
Thank
See ya.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Great job as always, Hudson.
Thank you.